Hi, I'm Dr. Jessica Higgins, a licensed psychologist and relationship coach, and this is the Empowered Relationship Podcast. Today, we're talking with Dr. Rachel Glik, a licensed professional counselor and relationship coach, about family estrangement and how couples can navigate this painful and complex terrain with more empathy, unity, and growth. If you'd like to strengthen your relationship with more clarity and care, download the free relationship guide, 12 Relationship Principles to Strengthen Your Love, to practice the foundations of secure, lasting connection. You'll find powerful ways to deepen trust, improve communication, and keep love alive. Let's get started. Rachel, thank you for joining us. It's such a treat to have you back, and I will make sure to put the link to our previous conversation and episode on today's show notes. And yeah, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's so good to see you again and to talk some more.
Yes, likewise. And we're going to be focusing on a very specific topic that I think more and more people are negotiating, and that's adult-child estrangement. And particularly as we look at relationship, how maybe parents in a couple bond, marriage, relationship are negotiating this scenario and perhaps might approach it differently. But before we even dive into the details, let's just get a scope. And like you said, you wrote a article that got a lot of attention, or talk to us a little bit about how you started addressing this.
Yeah. So adult parental estrangement, adult child and, tension with parents and estrangement with that has been something that I've noticed growing in the past 20 years, I'd say, in terms of my own practice. And then, so I was been writing blogs about it in my own website, talking on Fox 2 about it. And then recently I wrote an article on the Wall Street Journal about it. And then just the outpouring of parents who are in so much pain over this has become a new specialty for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
And talk to us a little bit about how you see this happening, or that this is more common. It's becoming more of an issue.
Yes. There's, some upsides and some downsides about that. The upsides is that the younger generations are becoming more conscious, more intentional in their relationships. They're going to therapy more. They're starting to individuate in a different kind of way, where they're seeing, like, because our culture and our family was like this, or if this didn't feel good inside, it doesn't mean I have to accept it, or it doesn't mean I just have to go along and not say anything, and so that's the good news, is that, there's more cycle breaking and affecting change, and hopefully to help the whole lineage, heal. But there's the downside is that in the process, there are many adult children who are not able to hold space for human imperfection, for how they can honor what they need and still maintain some sort of mercy or how it's impacting the parent, and not, in some sense of losing appreciation for the gift of life that they gave. And I don't see that for any adult child who feels like it's so unhealthy for them to be in that relationship. It's not coming from lack of compassion. For me, I just see it as just a very painful experience. And so anything that I can do to help bring harmony and help close the gap, I just feel very called to do that.
Sounds like you're holding both perspectives, and that as you're seeing the positive aspects of an adult child who's really being conscientious and intentional about how they're negotiating relationship, how they're participating, and perhaps, as you said, even breaking some cycles that are either dysfunctional or have real difficulties to them, and that maybe don't even feel healthy in, and that to do that differently is really a positive thing, and to create more healing in the lineage, as you said. And then also that the compassion, or maybe even some level of acceptance, or even regard for the giving life. I mean, I can hear maybe some people are like, oh, the old kind of saying of like, I brought you into this world, and like,
Right,
you know, they
exactly.
like having that level of respect, but it's so coming from that top down one-upping, and it's not very collaborative or that relational.
Right, right. It can sound very obligatory, like, so I owe you to stay in a very unhealthy situation because you brought me in this world. Like it can sound, but it's all about consciousness and how you frame it. So this idea that how to balance and understand without it feeling like dogmatic or autocratic or uncollaborative, to have more appreciation for the life our parents gave us. I find spirituality really helps with that. That is really more of like the soul's journey, and like and also family constellation therapy, if you've ever heard of it. I love that. And it's like, the parents always came first. Like there is this order and balance to energy flow. And the spirituality has helped me with that, to see that it's really about how energy flows. So it's cause and effect. Like we are a vessel, and the light or the creator or the source of life is the source. And so similarly, on some level, we receive our energy through the parent. So if there's a cutoff with a parent, it's not because you owe them something. It's because you cut something off for yourself. And so that it's a different obligation. It's an obligation to your soul, and to trust that there's something that you're here to learn and to grow and to heal for yourself and your whole soul root family.
Yes.
It's kind of zooming out with a little bigger picture.
Yes. Yes. Well, and I would love for you to talk a little bit. I have done the family constellation work, and it was so powerful when I did it. I was actually being trained. It was a somatic psychology course in my PhD program, and did a whole piece, and it was quite profound. And then it reminds me of Mark Wallen's "It Didn't Begin with You." I don't know if you've
yeah, that's the main one that I have that I refer to. Yeah. Yeah.
And the epigenetics of like how trauma can be passed down. And also from a spiritual perspective, do you see just the kind of the energy, and as you're describing, I don't know if I have your language exactly right, and how that comes from the parents, and that there's also a unique individual spiritual, how do you see those? Do you see that there's okay?
And I get this from, thousands of years old wisdom, the wisdom of Kabbalah, which might overlap with other spiritualities as well, but that's where I get my reservoir of wisdom that resonates with my soul. But in that wisdom, we have like an individual, it's called tikkun, which is a correction. We came to overcome something. We came to reveal light that we haven't revealed yet. We haven't completely revealed the totality of our light or our soul or our gifts, our value. And so and we also have things that we may need to put into balance from previous lifetimes. So we have our individual, and according to the wisdom of Kabbalah, the soul chooses the parents that are just right for their journey. And so that can be really hard to swallow,
Yeah.
Or some people, it can be like, for many, it's just like life altering with how they look at everything that's happened in their life. And it still doesn't mean that you accept behavior that's hurtful, and you don't, like just then, everything's just going to go on as it is. Still want to affect change and take care of yourself and keep evolving and transforming, but it can change the perspective. And then there's also a collective. The whole family could have something to work through together.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes that means like needing to have distance, like often I find that it's a developmental stage, that I hope it's that
Yes.
in some, like it's just too hard for them to keep healing themselves in the context of being connected with their parents. And then it's just part of a process of getting stronger within oneself to then be ready to be able to differentiate enough and to feel detached enough that you can then see your parents as separate individuals who probably had their own trauma or had their own lack of education or, lack of attunement that they needed. And then you can come back with some compassion and, maybe a new chapter that has different kind of rules and boundaries.
Personally, it's reminding me of Dr. David Schnarch's work at the Passionate Marriage and Intimacy and Desire. And he talked about oftentimes it's too much to ask to hold on to self in such close proximity, that we do need to leave. And I think he was more saying like leaving the house and then perhaps at some point when we feel a little stronger and we feel a little bit more able to hold on to self, we can go in the other side of the house or then the other room. And then eventually we can maybe be in the same room. But this kind of iterative process, as you said, developmentally, that it's actually part of the growth, and that sometimes it's too big of a risk. It's too much work to try to do it in such close proximity when so much is getting activated in the relational cycles. And I just want to also comment that I very much believe that when one from a collective, that when one person heals, it actually helps all of us heal and the families start. Yeah.
Yes. So that can be a beautiful part of the work for the adult child to be, even either it's verbal and expressed, or even inside oneself, that this is me still holding you in my heart and appreciating all that you've been through and all that you have given me. But I want to work on our wholeness with some space.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many individual scenarios that no one estrangement story that's the same, but there are themes, and there are themes that there's other factors also that are contributing to this, but I think that what I shared feels like the most prominent one. But I find that there are themes for both. I tend to work more with the parents. It just seems to be what, how that has unfolded, that where the creator must want me to be. But I enjoy working with the adult child too, and sometimes I do that in tandem.
Mm-hmm.
And but even though that each story is unique, I'm learning more and more and more about what some of these themes are.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'd love to hear about those themes. And I also just want to ask, as we're talking, it seems as though perhaps there's lots of range in how this can look. If we're talking about potential strained or estranged relationship, but there perhaps are attempts that can be made that maybe the parents aren't catching or recognizing, and then it might feel like it's a 180, but there's been so many attempts. So that there's ways in which, or perhaps one just doesn't have the skill, right? That it's just like, I need to kind of come in hot and do a 180 just because I can't do anything else, or I don't know how to do anything else. And while that might not be the approach that's going to offer more of this collaboration, it might be one of the steps towards healing. As you said, it won't be that hopefully the end all be all, but it is part of the process.
Yes, absolutely. And so this is where I try to always help. Same with when I help couples, or in my book also on marriage. I really try to help as much as possible at any stage of where you are, where there's some sort of friction, strain, rupture, or whatever, which is normal and part of life.
Yes.
To seize the opportunity to kind of cope ahead, to get tools to navigate what you're going through so that you can elevate, you can get closer and heal more versus, waiting till it's really far down the road. But even if it is far down the road and your child isn't speaking to you, there's still so much you can do.
Got it.
But these different stages, like just this morning, I had a session with a woman who I've been meeting with for marriage. And now we're talking about them as a couple with the estrangement that's going on. And then in the meantime, I'm spending more time with her meeting individually because she's in a point where it could go either way right now. She's had a couple of incidences where she was putting pressure on her son, who was struggling with some mental health issues and trouble functioning as a 22-year-old, and so anything of what she overlays with her own expectation or what she thinks it should look like in his life and his relationships is just making him pull away and not speaking to her for periods of time. So I'm like, this is the perfect time for you to actually make amends for those interactions, even though he was doing things that weren't okay on some level. That is just not the priority right now. You need to make sure that you're a sanctuary for him. And so then we're working on how she can own what it is that she's been doing and how she's really looking at herself. Adult children love that when they see parents who are, I'm really, thank you for, making some changes as painful as they are. They're giving me a chance to look at what I need to change. This is something that I have to deal with in all my relationships, not just with you. Like, she can start to catch it where he can see that, okay, she's safe because she can see what I'm struggling with here. And he doesn't have the tools or the skills or the emotional capacity to really walk her through what she needs to do for him.
No.
He's just overwhelmed and overloaded, can't even put one foot in front of the other in his life. So he just runs. He just flees.
Yes.
And that is a theme. That is a theme I find with some adult children who are get easily dysregulated, who have maybe had learning disabilities or some sort of genetic conditions that make it harder for them to handle things in life, and they still feel like that child, whatever. That's one component, is how do you navigate it?
Oh my goodness. I'm so compassionate to the strife of this. And as you're describing about the adult child perhaps feeling so ill-equipped to negotiate the dysregulation or the life skills or what challenges present in life, and wanting to be differentiated, but feeling perhaps unresourced to do so, and just the overwhelm around all that.
Yes.
And that fleeing could feel like a real viable option.
Yeah.
And then also just compassion to the parents here, as you're talking about here, is the one parent. And I imagine this might be a theme that a parent might want to support the independence or the adulting of an adult child, and perhaps wants to start to set some limits and boundaries, or as you said, may have expectations around when that's going to happen or how that happens. And if there's other things like that appear as in problems of whether or not it's substance use or some mental health and ways people are dealing and coping with mental health issues or hardships. And so to kind of try to parent, right, an adult child in these kind of very firm ways, but that also how to make room for a new dynamic. Like there's so much here that makes this really challenging.
And I think none of us, I'm a parent of adult children. And so a lot of my lessons have been through my own stories. Along the way is learning from my clients of what not to do most of the time. But it is a parenting, relating with adult children is much more difficult, can be much more painful, requires much more nuance and finesse than I ever thought, and most people ever think. And you're planting seeds. Like I just spoke yesterday about this topic of empty nesting and how we're kind of always empty nesting. And the minute they're born, we're already preparing, just little things with growing more independent. And those are times of we're planting seeds on how that goes. And we're just not really trained in this nuance of how to communicate and how to keep mostly like the self-awareness it takes to make sure that we are not overlaying our expectation on them. So like with this story of this woman I was meeting with today, the parts of how they're helping him with his mental health and the boundaries around, supporting him financially and what that requires, and like a contract of sorts or behavioral plan, that's separate. They're not having problems with that. It's when the woman was overlaying her expectations of what he should do in personal relationships with her or with a sibling or with who he's dating.
The judgment.
Exactly. And that's where she absolutely interfered in a way that did not support him, and that we as parents have to spend a lot of emotional energy to be very patient and detached from their choices and let them learn their lessons on their own and deal with our own fears within ourselves, not putting them on them to try to change or control them. It is an instinct. Right. To feel like you don't even think it through. You're just like, that can't be like that. You can't, what's going to happen if you, and I lived that where like I felt like it was important to express some things that I was concerned about with my kids. But so much of it that didn't go well was when I was coming from fear, not dealing with my own emotions and not really letting go. I mean, what I say to my clients is, you've basically raised them. You're yes, there is still parenting that happens. I'm not saying that we don't, but mostly it's really just, offering that what they need most is that we believe in them and that we want to inspire them to and empower them to ask their own questions of what they think will be helpful for them. Like I call them neutral affirming statements. We have to be so much more neutral than we realize.
It's turning the corner to more how we would ideally relate to anyone, as you talk about these general relational skills, and you offer a lot in your book, and that we're turning the corner. I remember I've done a lot of parent coaching in the past, and I remember saying that very thing of like, she's been raised, right? You've imprinted and raised her. And I can appreciate the impulse to say, I got to do something like this, they need my help. And that's where perhaps encroaching on their space, when I do think there can be a lot, as you talk about, the listening, the compassion, the understanding. And then if they solicit,
Exactly.
right? Or to
Exactly.
be affirming, and
Yeah.
what's the impulse and what are they after and how that makes sense, and just to have that understanding and that depth, and then to be able to offer if it's invited.
Yeah, exactly. And, and like I said earlier, it's not all or nothing. Like if you do find that something you're concerned about, like I know there were certain things that I wouldn't be able to have lived well inside myself if I didn't at least have a conversation about it, but that has to be done very carefully, very respectfully, with a lot of, affirming clauses, like no matter what you decide, I'm all in and I support whatever, like let's say if you have a concern about something you see and who they're dating, or has to be so careful because that's another theme of estrangements. Is the partner not feeling like they're accepted or supported, or there was some tension there in the beginning. Like I just knew from my sessions with clients that I need to be very careful when they bring somebody into their lives, to make sure they feel welcome. And if you do have a concern, you have to be very careful how you share it, and, kind of put it back on them. Like what, these are the things that I've learned is important, but you have your own individual path. But I just feel as your parent that I wanted to at least share from our experience what we have found helpful for long-term success and love and growth. And that's where I wanted to just have you, kind of consider these ideas.
And I wonder if you would agree too, if I can chime in, that there's an awareness of, I am coming into your lane a little bit. And I love that. And like, I'm recognizing I need to be mindful and sensitive, and maybe even ask for permission. Like I have some thoughts. I want to be able to say it once, and just if it's helpful, and maybe how I communicate, and just hear some things I've had wonder about. What do you think? What do you've noticed? But there's an appreciation that like, I'm coming over into your space and I'm aware that I'm doing it. And are you okay with that? Or maybe let me know when you are ready. What do you think?
I love it. I think that all points to a similar almost respect and attentiveness of still putting it back on them, that we believe in them to make the best choice for them, but that we're sharing something for them to, and the asking of permission is also very respectful, and they'll be much more receptive. But just most of us in the world, like without being therapists, or without learning, like even as therapists, like I still made so many mistakes that I've learned along the way, and have to work very hard to be intentional and to pause and think it through. But I just want to normalize that we often say we're not really good at apologizing. We're not really good at communicating. We are so much more naturally inclined to try to control and versus really offer, Yeah. And so just don't feel bad if you're not, but it's trainable. It's totally trainable. Like what I watch happen in these dynamics between adult children and their parents is not every situation, everyone is on that whole continuum that you mentioned, from how cut off they are and what they're really needing in their life varies. But the ones who are really trying to reconcile, it's remarkable how, just like with a couple, how much they could have missed an opportunity for harmony and for breakthroughs, really.
Yes.
To say, if they weren't really investing in learning how to communicate differently and open to self-reflection, to be self-reflective and self-awareness. And so, yeah.
And Rachel, I imagine you would agree. In my experience, this doesn't have to be super sophisticated. Yes, practice helps. We get more comfortable. We're able to access a lot more language. But just noticing, I notice I'm having a lot of fear, and I'm wanting to react.
Yep.
Like having that be somewhat visible.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what to say or do right now.
Yes, but that's like, but what has to first come is a consciousness shift. Yeah, just that it's not my job anymore,
right,
to manage or control or keep my expectations overlaid onto what their life's going to be like. And that is, I find like it's a grieving process to really.
It is, yes.
And that's where, it's so liberating once you do let go. Like I found when our second child, our son, I have a daughter and a son, and when the second one got married, it was our son. And that was a little another stage of empty nesting. Like, it's not just going off to college. Like, I realized, like, I felt this instinctive, like involuntary relief. Like, it is not on me anyway. This is them. Like, and then I could just be more witness to their life choices. And of course, it's very painful if I'm concerned about something or if they're struggling, or I still revisit some of the things that are hard, that they've picked certain things in their life path is not that what I would have wanted for them. But
Right.
they're such good kids, and they're doing so many things that are true to them.
Yes.
And so I just focus on that and let go. But which brings me to something that I just want to acknowledge, is that the pain for the parent, I wanted to validate that. And like, so much so that some have a hard time getting out of bed, especially the moms.
Oh my gosh, I was telling you before we got started that I have a couple that's negotiating an adult child estrangement where the adult child has set boundaries. And there's a lot of things and layers and aspects that are making it very
Mm.
complicated. But she's like on Instagram. There's a site called Mother Wound or something, and it's like
Mhm.
so heart-wrenching. And I think in those, what that is discussing is like this really maybe toxic behavior that the adult child has been experiencing. And so she's like, questioning herself, and like, she's like the mom that did all the things. And
Yeah.
and so just like, was I abusive, or like, just really wondering, and it's I
Mhm.
mean, it's like devastating for both of them. And I also, when you talk about the pain
Mhm.
and the dynamics, do you want to speak about potentially when two parents are involved and they're in a couple, like a marriage or a relationship, parenting
Mhm.
adult child? My feeling is often the parental, like, they might have places that they're on the same page, but they tend to
Mm.
operate a little differently. And
Yep.
do you want to
Yes.
talk about how this can add
Absolutely.
another?
Yes. I want to just like put that in a little I put a little box on my paper. I want to get to that in just a second, because you said something just now that like opened up, some
Yes.
gates. And that is that the I find that with a lot of parents, when they don't know what they've done, they feel like they've been such good parents, and many of them really are. It's very complex to try to like parse it out, to sort out what's them, what's me.
Right.
And I find that it's not even in balance at the beginning. It's really more of the onus and the ownership is like on the parents typically. And I liken that to the fact that we are their source. And so let's hold space. Like, I felt like it was a gift to give my children. They each in their own time in their 20s came to me, one more than the other, with grievances they had of like things I don't even remember saying, or things that I did or didn't do. And it was one of the most painful things, is like parenting is like, felt like my life mission, like,
Yeah.
so I just remember the pain, but I had it thankfully enough, like, enough exposure and enough whatever I was given.
Yeah.
But I just knew, like, I'm just so glad you're telling me. And that must have been really hard. And so those are the kind of things where we want to first make sure we create a space, even though I had my whole other explanations, and and there was time for that later for them to, and now that one of them has children of her own, she's seeing some other, she starts to come to it herself. Like, actually, I don't think that, leaving me at camp was the worst thing. Actually, it was probably good for me. I don't know, whatever it was, but, um, and at the same time, to appreciate that there's, even if it's not fair and even, there's still likely something that you're going to learn about yourself that is causing them to pull away, and that you just didn't understand or know before. And so even without meeting with the adult child, I just start doing like investigative work together. Like, what have you heard? What have maybe their siblings said? Where have you gotten any data?
Yes.
Tell me the interactions that led to them, da 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 da, or tell me anything they've ever said to you, or what was their childhood like? Like, you can start putting together the pieces for that particular child, how you were with them wasn't perhaps what they needed, or at times.
Yeah.
And so, it's not all or nothing. It doesn't mean discount ever any of all the good things, but there's an interface between you and your adult child, that soul and your soul. That means that then maybe what worked with the other kids just didn't work as well for this one. Or they're maybe hypersensitive to, and a lot of adult children take advice as criticism.
Yes. Yes. And I appreciate you pausing here, because I've heard adult children talk about, oh, I can never go to my parent because they'll just go into this guilt of like, oh, I'm such a bad parent, and like this
Exactly.
shame spiral. So it's like that now becomes a focus.
Yep.
And as you're describing, if there's enough ability to just hold for a minute, to hold space, that it's such an opportunity for the adult child to be seen, and an opportunity for a little bit more understanding. And while the facts and the whatever is being described might be different than what the parent would have recollected, or,
Yep.
that isn't even the thing. It's like they
Exactly.
had an experience and they're wanting that to be seen and heard and held and like responded to. Like that is where we have repair. And
Exactly. And we're just not trained in this. And but you can get training in this. Like I just was fortunate enough to be exposed and whatever that like it could have gone so the inclination was to do what most people do, which is to defend or what about all the other things or center my own feelings versus hers or his. And so I think the key of holding that like space to just listen and move away from the logic and move
yes,
toward the emotion and just that and what a gift you give that the most important person to hold that space would be your
totally,
parents. They'll need the
totally.
most from you. And it's okay if you don't, like you said, the data, like we just get so caught up, the ego gets so caught up on hold on, but this one truth isn't being factored in or that it's okay. Like,
Or how I'm being characterized. I'm a bad mom, or I'm a bad dad.
exactly.
Like that,
Yeah.
that isn't the thing. It's more of,
Yeah.
and can I listen? And is there something, a grain of truth, or something that I can, how this makes sense? Like the
Yeah.
story may make no sense to me, but is there a part of this that I can get? I think I was sharing the couple that I work with, and I believe that the adult child likely is on the spectrum of
Mhm.
a few different things, and perhaps his perception again might feel grossly different,
Mm.
and also his wanting to feel seen, or maybe having felt so different, right? And how that was
Yes.
made, like how there was space for that and honor for that. And I think they did a beautiful job in the way that they knew how, but perhaps there's a calling, right? As we're being
Mm.
invited into something like that offers new understanding, that we can operate in a different way, that,
Exactly.
I mean, that's calling us up to another cycle
That
that could be even more healthy
yes.
for everyone.
And that, to not really have judgment as part of it. Like, why would you have known how you respond to somebody who's potentially on the spectrum or, like there's
Yes.
just, we're not like, everyone isn't like having their doctorate in parent education, but we're, if you're open to growing and open to learning and trust that it's happening for you and not to you, then you can really like let yourself lean into it, like welcome it, accept it, even while you're aching and you're sobbing, you just still lean into this like idea that it's a friendly universe. There's something here that's trying to be revealed that will help me grow, help my whole lineage navigate something. And yeah, so that's
I'm actually thinking, is there anything you've said something so beautiful here around it's happening for you, not to you. And for, let's say, the adult child, because I have another client coming to mind, that her mother, speaking about control and right and wrong, lives in a very, at least how my client describes, I've never met mom, but
Mhm.
that there's so many examples. And even she just went on a trip and dad confided in her around these challenges, and it's visible to the family, but mom, and even there, I was curious, I was like, has there ever been a time where she's thought about maybe exploring this? And she's like, well, she's mentioned once or twice, but it feels like it's too big. And so in the sense of like,
Mm,
for a parent to look at, and if they've, I mean, as humans, we construct ways to cope and live in the world. And if we're of a certain age, we know that that works, and we know there might be some ways in which it doesn't work, but like this is what we know.
mhm,
To be
mhm.
exploring something different can feel incredibly terrifying.
Yeah, exactly. Is absolutely. And it's really remarkable that any of us can actually really navigate these because
Right.
we're all still so evolving and our levels of like what we've experienced in our lineage and in our own life experience and our neurologies and what there's so many factors that can make us more or less equipped to handle the sophistication especially as the younger generation is like kind of asking for more psychological sophistication and like
Yes.
more nuance of how we actually want to be talked to and how we want to be given space and be supported. And it's just not like you just go along because that's the way your parents did it.
Yes.
And that's good, but it also is creating a lot of rippling effects. So I just admire
Challenging.
anyone who's able to. There's usually something you can discover if you're the parent that is likely something that you can glean that even if it feels too like a disproportionate response from the child, you don't know what it's like to be them. You don't know what's like, but you can still usually learn something that you can take toward repair. But I would recommend getting help to do it. I when I'm present to these interactions, there's so much training I do in a sense, or coaching, and even right in the minute of like, okay, let's see if you can say that a little differently. Otherwise, it would just spin off, just like with couples, like
Yes.
just go from 0 to a million in a second. And so, to like let yourself all be in training on some level. So
I think it's support. There's some coaching on all levels just to be able to have this, stay focused on the opportunity for understanding.
So with couples, it can bring to the surface issues or fractures or differences that they're sharing in their relationship, and how they are parenting is one in my book, Soulful Marriage. I have a friendship wheel, like the 8 friendships of a relationship, and one of them is parenting. And it's one of the facets that you could really be an asset to your relationship, a deepening and a joy, and it could also be a huge problem in your relationship. So this certainly awakens the parenting to us aspect of your relationship that can overlap with some of the others, make you feel, So the key is that sometimes it means each parent deals with their relationship with the adult child separately sometimes.
Okay.
I find that to be the case, that like it's a different story for each parent. And while it's important that they stay unified and seek help in order to get guidance so that you're on the same page as much as possible,
Yes.
but you still might have your own individual relationship with them and serve a different role in their life that you can perhaps take different tracks on how to help repair.
Yes. Yes. When you were speaking about themes, I think we've touched on some themes. We didn't specifically lay it out, but one of the themes I'm thinking about around how a couple may have different parenting tendencies is one tends to be a little bit more wanting to have boundaries, and the other one tends to want to be much more relational, and they could judge each other. One is too strict, one is too permissive, right? This type of thing. And this can show up even in adult child relationships.
Yes. There's so many facets that they could differ on, anywhere from like financially, how to support them, or not support them, or, but what they can both learn to do though is to listen better. There could be variation on the willingness of that, and the appreciation for how important that is. But that's something that regardless of what you decide to do on the other facets of the dynamic is that what helps to repair is for the adult child to feel like, okay, I'm starting to acknowledge the things and I want to learn more about what I've done that wasn't how I wasn't there for you, or things that I'm doing today that might not be. And I promise I'll listen better this time. And that sometimes can melt a little bit of the ice, but it's still, they sometimes like to know that it's being facilitated sometimes, and it's not just them with the parents.
Do you find that sometimes if a parent is approaching the relationship from a different tendency, that they might be in service of a different need, where like the couple that I'm thinking of, he's wanting to create more health in the system. They've been very accommodating, maybe even they would say codependent, and not, or like enabling throughout. I mean, just loving and giving, and there's just no end to the way in which they love and show up. And so calling a boundary around, we're not going to do this and not have reciprocity of some sort, right? For you to treat us in really negative, hurtful, harmful ways. So there's just health in that. How he wants to do it, there could be lots of possibilities. Where for mom, she's in this place of like, I want to have connection and for there to be love and that real bond. And, so you could see perhaps
Yeah,
that both
exactly.
strength and also challenges, it could be done in ways that are
Yes.
maybe not optimal.
Right. And they're in different place with it.
Right.
And often it's hard at this stage to start setting those boundaries. Like, those are seeds that have been planted into bitter fruits. If you've been overgiving their entire life, that's a really it's not a service to the child, and is a nuance of how you do that in a balanced way with love and boundaries and boundaries and empathy, and but it can be really you can start to work on that as they're adult and already estranged, but you often don't have the leverage to do that, I
Right.
find. So
Right.
sometimes step one is first for them to feel heard, because they're not gonna, it's just practical. They're typically not going to be interested unless you can't change that whole system, but you can't go back in time in this moment and
Right.
start planting those seeds. But then after, perhaps you come with curiosity, you come with like giving them the most generous interpretation. There must be something we're doing, and we would like to know. And then from there, then you can evolve more into, perhaps we talk about how the chapter will look going forward that's mutually respectful. But sometimes it's quantum, though, where if a parent is so overgiving and has no personal boundaries and they neglect themselves so much, then sometimes we just focus on that for a long time. Like, and trust that in a quantum way, that as you stop giving away your energy so much and you start nourishing your own and honoring yourself, then just trust that process, and you'll get more clarity as you detach. So it's also a heavy weight for an adult child, energetically or consciously,
Yes.
to have somebody like, center their life so much around your well-being and your connection.
Mm-hmm.
So it's tricky when you're reaching that stage of
Right.
how you handle making change from your end as a parent with somebody who's cutting off ties.
When you say quantum, I'm hearing that as there's almost other ways in which the dynamic shift gets transmitted, right? That if I'm focusing on my well-being and holding some of my energy for myself, that on some level that's felt.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. It's like two things that aren't in the same location affect each other. That's quantum. Like, I love
Yeah.
that. How two atoms can be in two separate places, and once they've had a connection, they can be far away and they're still influencing each other.
Yeah.
So
Love
sometimes that's all we can do when there's a really severe estrangement, or sometimes the parent isn't ready, that they've realized they have overgiven their whole lives and they need some time because they don't want to enter back into a toxic situation
Right.
as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know there's so much here. Is there anything that you want to mention that could give people a little bit more direction? You've talked about really if there's an opportunity to listen, to focus on what can be learned and being open to that possibility of growth, that it might come in a really hard package, but there
It
could.
is, yes. The first thing I would say is just to be really compassionate with yourself, because
Yeah.
it is known to be one of the most devastating, unthinkable kinds of, ruptures or just fears that we have.
Totally.
And then what I always recommend, which is also in, the first pillar in my book, In a Soulful Marriage, is your relationship with yourself. So the first step is really to work on getting grounded. And there's typically a lot of ruminating that goes on, just a lot of dysregulation. And so really focusing on getting yourself, centered, grounded, loved, healed, like working on that and valuing yourself and your takeaway, like what might be some of my lessons here. It's part of that focus on oneself.
And that doesn't have to negate all the good.
Exactly. And maybe that self-worth may be a thing that you put too much, we all do typically, on like how we are as parents for our worth, or anything we do, anything achievement we have, we think that's who we are. And that's just not true. So it can be a real opportunity to unconditionally regard yourself with value and love and worth, and to lean into that, whatever it is that you think that this seems like a theme in your life in other ways, that maybe this is putting a spotlight on it or intensifying that. And then, I think that I do recommend, reaching out for help for this, because it's just really tricky.
Yeah.
And then to begin learning what it is that perhaps you could learn about your own growth and what might be pushing them away, being as open as possible to that. And then if you would like to work on repair, is to start learning how to make an apology that is really more about accountability and about growth, not just like, I'm sorry, but it's like, I get it. That like, okay, I think this is maybe what made you feel this way. Or if I don't understand it, I really want to learn.
Yes.
And to a point. And then also to know that you have your limits and your life is rich and full in other ways, and to really feed that. That
Like a real like ownership around this is what I can really hear and understand and resonates, and I'm willing to participate in showing up differently around.
Yeah, exactly.
And I can feel the value of that inside myself.
Mm-hmm.
And then, as you said, depending on the level of understanding, there might be limits. Is there anything you want to say around what would be helpful for couples if they're, because I could also appreciate in darker moments, what's getting brought up could be almost weaponized between the couple, right? That it's actually highlighting something that like, I have another client that really struggles with his wife, and his daughter's now struggling with the wife, and the daughter, like in their interaction, might give her father eyes of like, no, you're not wrong. And it's like,
I know. It's just, this opens up so many scenarios. Sometimes I've seen where partners who are really, one is like, it's typically the men who have more of their limits with this, like just more common. I'm not saying it's always the case. There's definitely exceptions, but I've seen where the spouse is like, I'm done. I'm not putting any more energy into this. We have our life. Let's go traveling. We've got other children, like enough already. And so, but the other one, she can't let it go. She can't. So they're having to try to negotiate how to be separate individuals in their relationship with this child and what they want to work on versus the priority that needs to be in a marriage. So I think it's really always about try to see where this is showing you, where you can work on growth in your relationship, more letting go of expectations, where you can become more unconditionally loving, where it's showing you areas that you need to work on to prioritize your relationship. I think you should not neglect your relationship because this is taking over. That's pillar 3 of the 4 pillars in my book is priority. You need to make sure you're nourishing this relationship and you have boundaries around this in your life, as hard as it is.
yes,
At the same time, see if you can find a way, if you're not on the same page with this, to meet with somebody who can be your neutral third party that you both trust, that it's not the marriage making the decision or each of you with each other, that you've trusted an expert that's going to guide you. And you just have to accept and lean into as best as you can what they're suggesting. So it takes the power struggle out of my way versus your way.
totally. And if I can harken back to something you said around the opportunity that if perhaps the adult child is identifying something that actually might be happening in the couple bond, that they have a beautiful opportunity to do work around that could be the quantum to or support for that quantum change as well. Okay, great.
But that has to be done carefully because, like you said, it could be weaponized. Like you could, we're going to want to point out on the other, this is what you do with me too.
Yes.
But you want to try to, that's why, a professional can help you navigate.
Yes.
Not pointing fingers. In fact, the best way would be for each to look inside themselves. I wonder, and create a safe space that you're patient with your partner and not try to keep it separate. But where you each look at, okay, I wonder how this is a familiar message I'm getting about my growth. That's the ideal. And not everybody's emotionally intelligent or as excited about growth or ready for growth as others,
Right.
But that would be the to shoot for is to try to be compassionate with your partner because they're going through it too.
Yes.
And I'll try to separate. Like if you're having that issue with your partner, deal with it separately than how it's happening there as best as you can.
Yes. Well, speaking of interesting growth, you've mentioned your book a few times, and I know we're transitioning here. If for people who want to start incorporating some of what you're talking about here, what would you like to direct people towards?
Great. So, well, actually, I think I can reach it.
Yeah.
And here, this is like my life's work so far. And a lot of it's a book that's about helping you heal and get closer in your relationship and especially closer with yourself, your true self.
Rachel, will you read it for people listening who are just listening to the podcast?
Oh, sure. That's right. I'm showing you a picture of it. It's called A Soulful Marriage, Healing Your Relationship with Responsibility, Growth, Priority, and Purpose. And I'm finding that there are parents who I'm working with to help with their relationship with their adult children that on their own they're finding it, and there's a lot of tremendous overlap of the journey of what you can do to help with your relationship with your adult child that you can also find in there as well.
I love it. Is there anything else you want to mention? I'll make sure to put the link to the book on today's show notes.
I just, whoever is experiencing this, I just want you to know my heart is open, and, you deserve to be cared about through this, and that to believe in your capacity to use this to turn something bitter into something sweet.
And do you have a website for people who want to find you?
And that's where you can find where to purchase my book. I have a book tab.
Nice.
So Dr. Rachel Glik, which is DrRachelGlik, no C in Glik, just GLIK.com. And I'm, on Instagram and Facebook, and I think LinkedIn as well. But on my website is where you can find ways to learn more about things I've written. I have a media tab with other articles that I've written. Other podcasts are going to be on there shortly too, but this is one of my favorites.
Yeah. Wonderful.
For sure.
Yay. Well, thank you so much for all that you've shared. I can just appreciate how much you really assist people and guide people in these very important principles. That is very holistic and supportive. So thank you.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm just so glad to know you, Jessica.
Thank you for joining today's conversation again with Dr. Rachel Glik. You'll find all the links, key takeaways, and the free relationship guide, as well as a full transcript at drjessicahiggins.com/podcast. It's an honor to share this time with you. Thank you for listening, and until next time, I hope you take great care.